Welcome to Inside Scoop Live, the podcast where indie authors get personal, sharing insights about their books, their writing journeys, and their passions. I'm your host, Sherry Hoyt, and I invite you to join me for engaging conversations with both debut indie authors and seasoned veterans. Whether you're looking for your next great read or a bit of inspiration, you've come to the right place. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Jane Rogers joins the show today to talk about her book, Laughing Through the Storm. It's an inspiring and funny memoir about resilience, hope, and finding humor in life's toughest moments. Before we get started, here's the inside scoop on the author. Jane Rogers is an accidental expert in epilepsy, diagnosed at 13 and living with it ever since. She's spent over 3 decades navigating seizures, side effects, and hospital adventures with grit, sarcasm, and a solid sense of humor. Laughing Through the Storm is her first book, a tribute to resilience, ridiculous moments, and finding light in the darkest places. She lives in Ottawa with her supportive husband, Pascal, and their 2 mischievous chihuahuas, Junior and Bailey. And you can learn more at laughingthroughthestorm.com. Well, hi, Jane. Welcome to Inside Scoop Live.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to learning more about you and your book. To start us off, why don't you tell us a little bit about your book, Laughing Through the Storm? What's it about? And maybe what your inspiration was behind writing the story.
Yes, of course. Well, it's about my life living with epilepsy. I've had it for over 30 years since I was diagnosed when I was 13. So basically, I talk about the ups and the downs and the unpredictability of living with epilepsy. And as well, I talk about the hard times through the brain surgeries, but I also bring in a lot of humor and the resilience I've built through going through all those hard moments. So with the inspiration behind writing this book is really growing up, I found that, there was a lot of stories about a lot of people who have had problems with epilepsy for years, but then they find a cure and haven't had it for many years. But there's not a lot of stories about people who are still struggling, but are still living a fulfilling life. And I want to be that voice because I basically now, I have them every 2 days. Like I had one yesterday. But I've still been able to live a fulfilling life. I'm married. I travel a lot and do many great things. And I want to give hope to people like myself that there's always hope out there and there is light somewhere that could, potentially help them in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so important to share stories like yours because, we may intellectually know that we're not alone, but you may not always be feeling that, especially in the moment when you get a diagnosis like that or, anything really. So thank you for sharing your story. Now, you open the book by putting readers right away into the reality of a seizure. Why did you decide to start your story this way?
Okay, well, I felt that opening the book that way was the most honest way to bring readers into my world.
Mm.
Yeah, and when people hear about epilepsy, they often don't really understand what a seizure actually looks like or feels like. And I found by starting this story right in the middle of that moment, readers are more likely to feel the experience and they have a small glimpse of the chaos and the intensity of what comes after the seizure.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed over the years is that when I tell people about that specific time with the dislocations, I have one of 2 responses. Either they completely don't believe me one bit, or they're really curious and they lean into it and want to know more.
Oh,
So
wow.
I found that starting the book that way captures the same reaction. It pulls readers right into the reality of the experience, and it makes them more curious to understand the rest of my story.
Yeah, that's so interesting, that spectrum of responses you get.
Yeah.
I have not ever seen a person go through that, but I imagine it would be scary for me as a witness, just not knowing what to do. you know?
Exactly, yeah, and whenever I tell people about my condition, I always try to explain it to them as well as I can and make them feel as calm as they can be and make them understand that, what they're thinking in their head is, worse than really what is going on in that
Mm,
moment, and, to not stress about it, but I know it from experience. When you first see someone have a seizure, you can't help but have, like, the stressful reaction
yeah.
right away. It's just kind of human nature. Yeah.
Right, right. Now you mentioned you were diagnosed at 13, which I mean, just being 13 is hard, you know? So what do you remember most clearly about how epilepsy changed maybe your sense of yourself back then as a 13-year-old?
Well, yeah, when I was diagnosed, I honestly really didn't know what epilepsy was at the time. I was
Right.
completely clueless to that. And I really didn't understand on how it would affect my life, especially in school. And I was very naive and thought I could just tell people about it and it wouldn't be a big deal. But the other kids also didn't understand what it was. And so suddenly I was being labeled as different or weak and weird. And that really affected me very internally. And I started to really close up and I felt I had to keep my head down. However, I was fortunate enough to find a couple of friends who didn't see me as a girl with epilepsy. They just saw me as a girl who wanted to belong like everyone else.
Mm,
Yeah, and being diagnosed at that age definitely shaped me. And for a long time, I learned to stay quiet about it, which was really not healthy in the end. But it was how I protected myself. And over time, I learned that talking about epilepsy is actually powerful. And that is a big part of why I wrote this book.
yeah. I mean, you reacted the way a 13-year-old would react. What did they know about? Why would they know anything about it?
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned this just a minute ago about what people see from the outside is very different than what's actually going on
Mhm.
during a seizure, and so I'm sure that applies to just living with epilepsy as well. What did you most want readers to understand that they might not understand or have understood before reading your book?
Yeah. What they don't see is the unpredictability around it, especially the recovery afterwards and the
Mm,
constant awareness that another seizure could come at any moment. You're carrying the uncertainty every day. And when things seem like it's normal, yeah, a seizure could come at any second. It affects your confidence, your independence, and how safe you feel with doing everyday things like crossing the street, for instance.
mm,
And what I really want readers to understand is that epilepsy is not just a medical condition. It doesn't just show up for a few minutes during a seizure. It's something that shapes your daily life.
mhm.
But at the same time, it doesn't define who you are. That's where the humor and resilience became really important to me.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that you incorporated that mix of humor in with some of the more intense moments. Would you say that that is who you are naturally, or is this something that was shaped by what you've lived through and are living through?
Yeah. Well, in all honesty, I really feel like I didn't really become my true self until meeting my husband.
Mm,
I used to be extremely shy, very guarded. I put up walls around myself from past experiences. But my husband, he helped me feel safe. And he has this uncanny ability to make anybody feel comfortable
mm.
around him. And like, I mean, the first date we were so shy, but he just kept on trying to be funny and getting me comfortable. And eventually, at one point during our date, like, I mean, just the walls started to crumble down and I became more goofy and throwing jokes all as well and so forth. So I was like, oh my God, like this guy, he's done something. Like, where have you been all my life, And, but as well, like from personal growth with going through the Hoffman process, that really as well helped me get my voice back and so forth. I'll tell anybody about the Hoffman process. Anybody should really go there because it's an amazing thing to do. But him and the Hoffman process for sure has really kind of broken down those walls. And I feel, like I know I'm myself these days, my true authentic self for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I love that. He rubbed off on you from the first date, huh?
Yeah, you sure did.
Now, talk about the aftermath because it seems like some of the hardest moments in the book are not the seizure themselves, it's what happens afterwards. And which part of that experience tends to be the most misunderstood, do you think?
Yeah. Well, for starters, I suffer from grand mal seizures.
Mm,
And those are the type of seizures that are the most taxing on the body. So after I usually have them between 30 seconds to a minute of a seizure. And afterwards, it honestly feels like I've run a marathon in a minute flat. Like
oh,
my body is so completely spent, completely drained. My brain feels like it's there's a jackhammer going out my head, like just
um,
continuously. It's just brutal. And
mm,
then the brain fog. I can't think straight, which all amends to feeling like a zombie, to say the least. I feel like a zombie, and over time, I mean, I've been having these for over 30 years, and it still doesn't get any easier, honestly.
mm,
Uh, but like outside, people just don't see it, so they think I look fine and everything. But that's the problem. It's an invisible struggle that people cannot see.
right, right. Now, you mentioned earlier that you have them every 2 days.
Mhm.
Is your body going through something that you know it's going to happen every 2 days, or is that just how
Yeah.
it's been?
Well, yeah, right now I'm in the middle of going on a new kind of medication and also getting off of a medication I've been on for over 25 years. So
Mm.
my body is just having a complete, like meltdown to say the least. And
Oh,
it's like with epilepsy, the system is very sensitive. So any kind of slight change could wreak havoc in the brain. And unfortunately, right now, it's with me having seizures every couple of days. But I am, working with a new neurologist in Toronto who has a different perspective with things. And hopefully, he'll be able to help me. But for now, I do know that from talking to some other epileptics that this medication, it didn't help them until after a full year of them being on this medication. So
mm,
I'm halfway there. So who knows, like, I mean, you never know, but it does take time as well. When you go on new medications, you don't necessarily see any difference at first. And with me, it's like, yeah, the seizures are out of whack. It's tough, but I'm optimistic that there can be a positive change in the future. I just have to kind of keep my head down and stay positive.
yeah. Get through this
Yes, exactly.
transition. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and that makes sense because being on a medication for 25 years is a long time. And I'm sure there's been a lot of medical updates and improvements since then. So that
Mhm.
makes sense to try something new. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I'm one where like whenever there's a new kind of medication or a new kind of a procedure, I'm always willing to give it a shot because you just never know if it could actually end up helping me, and if it doesn't help me, but if they get more kind of information to help another person, then at least I'm doing that.
Yeah. You talked about your humor and there are moments in your memoir that are genuinely funny, even while something difficult is happening. Is there one moment that best captures that balance for you?
Oh boy, okay.
Just one? Yeah.
Yeah, just one, right? I know, right? Well, okay, so I have had seizures in many different places over the years, but
Mm.
there's one place that is definitely the most awkward place, and that is the bathroom. Now, I'm not talking about while I'm brushing my teeth.
Oh
I'm
no.
talking about while I'm on the toilet. And in that moment when the seizure hits, I'm not thinking of anything philosophical or anything like that. I'm thinking more like, are you kidding me right now? You couldn't just one more minute? But no. But in that moment after I get mad, I think, well, this could be a funny story to tell people one day. possibly on a podcast. So there you go.
That's true. That's one of those things. Okay, in the moment, it's not funny, and it probably will took you a little while to be able to laugh about it afterwards. But oh my goodness, it says, "Lady, we're not on your schedule. We're on mine."
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully, it wasn't a public restroom.
No, luckily they've always been in the home, but it's been 3 times. 3 times it's happened to me.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
And yeah, but luckily not in the public. Knock on wood, that will never happen, but you never know.
Yeah. Oh, I shouldn't have brought it up. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Now, one thing, all proceeds of your book are being donated to Epilepsy Ottawa. Tell
Mhm.
us a little bit about the organization and why this was such an important part of your book's mission.
Yes, of course. So, Epilepsy Ottawa is a nonprofit organization that is based in Ottawa here. It's supporting the epilepsy community with education, support, and awareness, where it helps reducing stigma and isolation. My personal experience is, well, back then, when I first was diagnosed, we didn't have the internet or anything. So when we found out about this organization, we went there every month to listen to the speakers they had or different doctors that came in. So it was very helpful to us.
Yeah.
And this is not just about me. This is a purpose driven project where I want to help others. And if I could do that by donating my proceeds of my book to this organization that has helped me over the years, then I would absolutely do that. That's the purpose.
Yeah.
And if you want to learn more, their website is epilepsyottawa.ca.
Okay. That's wonderful that you're giving back. It's so funny nowadays because, gosh, don't we take the internet for granted and all the things that we have, all the information at the tip of our fingers?
Yes,
Yeah.
I know. It's just like the amount of hours my parents spent on reading books with all that, or just everything. They just did so much to try to learn more and more about the disease and so forth. And, what we have now, it's like they were like, oh my God, it would have been so much easier for them. Yeah.
Absolutely. For someone living with epilepsy or loving someone who is, what do you hope this book offers them?
Well, I hope that they will feel less alone in this and they will feel more understood. For the loved ones, I hope they get a little bit more of an understanding around the hidden side of the epilepsy
Mm,
and me being able to show the reality and the emotional side, and that this book will offer some hope for people who are struggling, not just epileptics, but anybody who is dealing with a chronic disease,
yeah.
and I also hope that the humor and resilience of all of this will also give them strength to, move forward and try to keep fighting.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe that your mindset plays a big role also.
Hmm. Yes, exactly.
You've obviously turned a very deeply personal experience into a book that can help others. Will you write another book or do you have other creative plans for your future?
Well, for now, I'm definitely want to focus on the public speaking side of things. That has always been the biggest goal, is to start spreading more awareness and talking about my story. However, everybody around me is like, you got to do another book. So plans for that in the future for sure. But for right now, I definitely want to get my name out there more and my story out there, because I think that I can do some good in this community by sharing my story. Yeah. So that definitely doing more public speaking and then potentially a book in the future.
Now, do you have a website where readers can go to learn more about you and your book?
Yes, absolutely. So it's laughingthroughthestorm.com.
All right, perfect. Jane, is there anything else you wanted to add today?
Yeah, I guess I just hope that whoever's listening out there to not give up hope and not be afraid of talking about your condition and so forth, because really it can be very powerful when you start talking about it. And even if people don't necessarily relate right away, there's some things that people can relate to, and then they'll be more willing to open up about themselves too. So I hope that I can kind of encourage people to not just keep it inside.
Well, Jane, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing a little bit about yourself and your book. Really enjoyed it. We learned so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you so much for joining me today for my interview with Jane Rogers, author of Laughing Through the Storm. To learn more about Jane and her work, visit laughingthroughthestorm.com. And be sure to check out our other interviews at InsideScoopLive.com.